We are explicitly informing the framework, and let's try to call this. Now it came, guys. Okay. The point is, in certain scenarios, Spring does not need this information. By default, it will read, okay, in the URL, val1 is coming, I need to take that and assign here. In the URL, val2 is coming, I need to take and I need to assign here. But as we started making some experiments, we started realizing Spring is not able to resolve these values perfectly. It doesn't know which name is what, and it started asking us that information. Okay, maybe certain scenarios, you never know, version by version, Spring might be doing a lot of experimentation. But right now, when we code, we have this kind of observation. Accordingly, we need to handle. So what did we realize? Very precise details were required to be provided to Spring. In this case, first, yes, we have to provide the value for val1 and val2. Step number 2, we need to use this kind of annotation @request param to guide the Spring system that this data is going to come from incoming request. And after giving that data, okay, we tried to read, still it was not reading. Then we had to even tell Spring more precisely, in the incoming request, the value of this is going to be val1, and that we provided. Sometimes this is optional, but right now, while we are doing the testing, it is precisely asking. So if in your system, it gets to this state where you need to provide, then provide even exact mapping. You never know, version by version, what changes might happen. But if it comes to this state, experiment and test. That is what I am trying to tell you. Okay, so what is our next experiment? We provided this URL. And in the backend part, we wrote this kind of a business logic. And then it is able to read the value and return the value. Okay, so we will be putting this in a paintbrush so everything stays together. So in the browser part, we are passing this kind of a thing. Okay, already taken. And in the code part, we are doing this. This is how corresponding mapping is happening between this part to this part. Okay, we have to tell to the framework that it is a request mapping. So @request param, we are saying, and these are going to be considered as parameters. So this is the parameters here, and whatever is the name which was used here, we specified the name in this case, and now it is available. This came basically here. Okay, and then we defined it to whatever variable we want to hold into, and then doing it. So try to experiment with yourself. Okay, with providing no values, then you understand what Spring wants from you, and then you draw your conclusions. But yes, this is a very detailed till the end, specifying everything clearly. Okay, now let's try to do some variation. From the postman, if we give both the values, Spring is able to resolve and take the values. Okay, if you don't give one of the value, then what happens? Let's see. In the backend side, you wrote code that read these values. But in the front end side or invoker side, now let's say I don't pass this value. Just see, as soon as we remove this, uncheck, it removed from the URL also. Means we are not giving the value. Ideally, some problem should definitely come if we don't give the value. You should expect things to break if you don't do the right things, right? That is what is experimentation. Okay, so now we go here, send. Yes, required parameter val2, okay, is not present. So they want it, but we are not providing it. So some error, this time meaningful error come. But again, you are seeing different types of error codes are coming. Now it is saying bad request 400. Earlier it was saying something else, internal server error. Before that, sometimes 404. That means there is a meaning to all these HTTP status code also. We will be discussing that later. But just understand the behavior, the errors are changing. But what you need to do is focus. Okay, वो बोलते हैं ना अर्जुन की आग, right? You have to focus why it might be happening, what have I done wrong, and then you have to fix it accordingly. Okay, then you have to fix it very precisely. Okay, so I have not given the value, and that is where it is happening. So do the mapping. Your first step will be, how do you process this kind of a request? How your thought process should be. Let's try to take it. How your thought process should be. Whenever this request comes in, I want you to start thinking like a CPU, that thinking like a processing of this internet world. As soon as you use this, your breakdown analysis should be, okay, on HTTP protocol or some HTTP supported service should be up and running. This should be your first thought process. Okay, second, it should be running in, if there is no HTTP protocol enabled, basically nothing works. So first thought process when you look at this URL is HTTP protocol should be running. Second thought process, the server should be on localhost. This is how you debug step by step. Server should be running on localhost. If you make any problem here, no, it will not be able to connect also. Next, it should be running on port like this. If you're not getting any responses, means the problem is there in the first half itself. For example, you go here and you're doing something really weird, like instead of 8080 calling 8081, and then by mistake or whatever copy pasting, just see, not getting responses. Means you're not reaching to the right server. What are you really debugging then in the code? Forget about your code. You're not on the right server, first of all. So you need to be really careful. Sometimes people do like this, 8080, that's okay, but they apply HTTPS, and now they start trying to call this. Here the error is saying OpenSSL, nothing but some certificate related error is there. And then they are worried like, why is my server not running? Array, understand. If you are not able to reach out to the server, Spring is not going to receive request, not give you the response. That means the problem is there in the first three parts itself. Either your protocol is a problem, or your server is a problem, destination of server, or your port is a problem. If here itself problem is there, what you have written code is completely meaningless. Your code is not even getting executed. So guys, learn to narrow down the problem properly. Unnecessary confusion will come if you don't have clarity. So that is the reason we are doing this kind of a talk. The first step will be, protocol should be proper where your system is behaving, or problem will come there itself. Second step, the server is running on right port location or not. That is how you have to think. Step number 3, validate the port. If these 3 things are fine, if fine, then only we can, okay, then only it makes sense to even go to code. So how do? We are coding a little, testing a little, incremental testing you're doing, not like fully writing your code and then testing it. So you already know that our server was there, it was running here. So we did not face these problems because we were testing immediately. That is how your another tip for better coding will be, code a little, test a little. Code thoda sa, immediately test it. Don't wait for 1 hour of coding. No, parallelly, as you reach to some stable point, test it. If there is a problem, you know that the problem happened with that change only. You added a new method and your Spring application is not coming up. Narrow it down. Oh, that problem is with the method. Now, write the method in a proper manner. Even break it down. Introduce. Code a little, test a little. Code a little, test a little. Let me tell you, by the end of 2 days, your code will 100% work. But if you code everything and then start testing, it will become a nightmare, stressed out with no results. That is how panic will trigger. The right way of coding in the industry is code a little, test a little. The way we are doing, we are experimenting, coding modification, testing a modification, coding a modification, testing a modification, not memorizing anything. We are observing and learning. Oh, aise hota hai, oh, aise hota hai. The more you spend time in observations, then frameworks and coding and understanding will become easy. Few things you have to definitely learn, like, okay, this annotation is to be used, that annotation is to be used, but you have to get into deeper understanding, and so that you can actually solve problems. If you start memorizing it like your college examination, well, goes bouncer very quickly. So don't memorize. Okay, don't memorize. Don't memorize. Rather, experiment and understand. Errors will come. We are seeing so many types of errors. Read and experiment. Keep clean thought process. Okay, guys, are you understanding it? Let's take a quick poll, team. Let's take a quick poll. Already 2 hours are completed. We are almost at the final part of this experimentation, but still more things are there. Okay, please share your understanding score. These are very basic things. I think all of you, almost 80-90% of you should be able to already know these things. But I think the way we are touching it, it's not about understanding anymore. Okay, it's not about memorizing it. It's not about, yes, I know it. But look at the thought process and pattern. Okay, everybody knows, right? At the rate rest controller and all that. But how do you navigate? How do you think? उस पे थोड़ा सा try to put a focus. ठीक है? It will help you in debugging. That's what. Okay, different errors might be coming, but how to think clean, exact method matching should be there. That's how you reach. Okay, so thank you all for confirmations. Everybody, please be fully attentive. Okay, here we go, and we are writing our final conclusions here. What are our conclusions? Validate the port if fine. So when you do like this, first protocol validation, next server validation, next port validation. Anything fails here, it will not even go to your server. No need to check the logs also. The problem is elsewhere. Later on, if these three things are fine, then it goes to your Spring Boot application. Then, if fine, then Spring Boot comes into effect to execute this incoming request. Now, while executing the request, Spring Boot is first going to find, okay, your next process will be Spring Boot checks which method to be invoked when incoming pattern is like this. If it is not able to find the methods, wonderful errors will be coming. And then you keep your brain there only. So next step will be find the method. Spring Boot is going to check which method to execute, and Spring Boot locates that method. Step number 5, Spring Boot tries to invoke that method. In that, we realize we did not give a parameter. Spring Boot has another problem. So let's try to get it into a stable shape. Okay, passing all the data, coming it back here. Yes, it is working. If we don't give the parameter, Spring Boot has identified method, but it is now trying to call that method with the parameter we did not give. Spring Boot is saying, hey, required parameter not existing. So we need to give the right number of data, and then Spring Boot actually does the next step, which is what? Invokes the method. If in passing data to method any error comes, then fail again. Okay, else step number 6, data is actually provided to the server. And then step number 7 runs your logic, and step number 8 returns the response. Okay, super. Okay, this is our basic flow, investigated step by step. Okay, fine. Now we are discussing the next part, guys. How to pass data. That's what we are discussing. How to pass data. As part of passing the data, first form we saw how to pass it as request data. Now there are further variations of that. Okay, we are working on method is located. Now passing data. First form of that is request data. We can give request data. Okay, second form of that is passing data as path variables. Passing data as path variables. Third way to pass the data as request headers. So we can pass the data. How do you pass the data to the method? You can These are all defined as part of HTTP protocol. How to pass request data, path variables. Again, all these are the terms of HTTP we have to understand and accordingly write the backend code for that. You can pass the data as simple request param data, or path variable data, or request header data, or provide data as one of a common way, JSON string body. Multiple ways are there to pass the data. We discussed right now the first one. Now let's go through the remaining three also. I think now the base concepts are clear, so it will be able to quickly reach to these other places. Okay, what is a path variable? The variables defined in the path. Okay, what is the path? This that you are writing, this is nothing but path. The path which takes you to the method, that is the path. You can define parameters here. For example, let's say I will say this /1. So before the question mark, guys, before the question mark, after your port, this is nothing but the path. Before question mark, after this. In the path, if you provide any data, it is called as a path variable. So what is the next syntax? You can provide the data in the path and you can receive the data in the Java code using some annotation. So that's the next variation. Okay. So how does this work? So we have something like this. Let's go back here. Our next experiment. Path variable experiment. Okay. Path variable. It will be something like this. Here we are again using a post and then providing like this. Here, this one is our path variable. Okay, and this we call it as a path. So in the path, when we specify a variable, that is a path variable. So in our case, this one is the path variable. Okay, now comes the question, how to read this one in the backend side? Okay, again, very simple. The way request param was the annotation for reading these parameters, like that, some path variable annotation is there to read the path variables. How to do it syntactically? Let's have a look at that. So first, yes, we are passing. Okay, let's say, again, experiment. We have not done any backend change. We are passing a path variable and give a submit. Not found. Okay, this kind of a path, we know that whenever we call this, Spring Boot is trying to look for a method which is exactly matching this. Now, there is no method in our code which exactly matches to my controller /postm/1. It's not able to match. If it is not able to match, Spring is going to go crazy. And that's what Spring has done. So one side pay you are saying, you need to find a method which exactly matches this thing. That's where I said, focus on how we are debugging. It will become clear to you. We are telling Spring system, when we code like this, we are basically telling Spring system, there is going to be a method in the backend which will be exact match for /mycontroller/postem/ some data like 1. Accordingly, call that method. That's the meaning. It's like hidden meaning. There has to be a method which will be invoked when this comes. That's a meaning. But you have not written like that. Spring is like, come on, you are expecting that, but you have not written code for it. I don't know what to do. I'm giving you an error. Spring and your understanding is not matching. Spring is saying, okay, in the method, now I need you to provide me an exact match for this kind of pattern. Where is it? We did not code. Spring is confused, giving us an error. So now we need to think. Okay, so think logically, guys. /controller, it comes here. /postem, it comes here. We have to specify now this path which Spring is not able to identify, and that is where it's not able to find our method. So now the problem is not in giving this, the problem is in picking the method itself. That's where it is saying not found, not able to locate it. How do we tell it? Array, you have to just play with the syntax here. After this, guys, here is the syntax. You do slash, because yes, slash is there, so you are doing a pattern matching slash. And instead of fixing the value 1, we want to give it a dynamic value. The way val1 and val2 values could be dynamic. So in this also we might pass, let's say sometimes 1 we might give, sometimes 2 we might give, sometimes 3 we might give. It's a dynamic way to pass a data. It's not static. My controller post-m is static. This is a data. Data can have any value. So if you want that, how do you define a method behind the screen to capture a dynamic value? There is a new syntax for that, curly braces, and you say, let's say path 1, let's say. Okay, so this was a way to capture data. Now we are doing another way to pass the data, which is a path variable. And how do you define this exact mapping? We simply define it by creating it something like this. So first step, if you create it like this, Spring is going to be able to find this method. Let's see whether it is finding or not. Okay, I don't know. Saving it. No compilation problem, no service startup problem. Tomcat started properly. Okay, now we go here. And now we are trying to call it. What we did, we helped Spring to find the method. Think logical? Logical. We helped Spring to find the method. That's it. We did not try to read the method. Now there are two parts. If you understand today's session, you will get more control on your project building. With this activity, it is working successfully. We only helped Spring to find the method. We did not help Spring to read the parameter. Both are two different things, guys. You can do it like this, piece by piece. That's where think logically. If you know how the framework works, debugging become easy. With this, we only told Spring which method to reach, and then we were able to successfully tell it. But we did not read that. How do we read it? For that, this new annotation is there, @path variable. What you're supposed to do it, simply add a new field, method parameter here, call it @path variable. And then, yes, you can choose this variable name and assign to your value. Again, these things are generally considered as optional. Okay, let me not pass it and see whether this mapping happens. With request parameter, it was expecting us. That's where we provided. Now we are trying to do this. Let's see what happens. Save. Okay, now we are trying to read this. We will just simply be doing path variable also returning back in response as well. And let's put up a /n new line character. And let's try to see whether path variable 1 is being read also or not. Okay, no compilation problem, no startup problem. Going back here, okay, trying to call it. Let's see what happens. Okay, not. It is causing the same issue again in reading this also. Name of the argument, it's not able to read the name somehow. Okay, so we have to then maybe explicitly specify it the way we did earlier. Okay, path 1. Okay, and now let's see how it goes this time. Go here. Okay, able to, no compilation problem, no startup problem. Going back here and then trying to invoke. Yes, it is now taking it. Okay, somehow I think maybe some library, something might have been disturbed, or maybe we might have to do a restart once of the Spring Boot application. But general terms, Spring is intelligent enough and doesn't ask you to keep defining this again and again if the variable names are the same. If the variable names are different, then you have to explicitly specify. But currently, our Spring Boot application is struggling somehow. Maybe library dependencies or conflicts happening. Because of that, it needs a very precise mapping about giving this kind of data. Okay, but just be aware, this is the fully perfect. It's like feeding food to Spring, not letting it make a decision. We are defining it very precisely. It basically is solving our problem, so we are able to make it work rightly. Okay, what did we learn from this activity? Let's try to draw a conclusion. Okay, passing via path variable. Let's go here in our Paint application. First, our aim is in Spring Boot code, in Spring Boot, find the method in Spring Boot, find the method which maps to this path. Okay, in Spring Boot, find the method which maps to this path. What is our path, guys? This one. That is the first thing. This. Okay. How do you find it? For that, what backend coding you need to do? You need to apply something like this. This is going to find the method. Okay, fine. Your next step is read this value which is coming in. Your second step is read the path variable which is coming in. Okay, how do you read the path variable? For that, this annotation is there. How do you read? For that, this annotation is there. @ path variable annotation. And that is what we can even put it here. Path variable related. Okay, path variable. Path variable. You can provide the data in request path. Okay. First, define the method which will match your path, and second, read the data. Basically 2 parts. Now, guys, understand this thing. Lot of variations around this can happen. You can give basically any value. So 1 is available. Let's say you make it like 100, and then you pass here. So just see that 100 value is also coming. Okay, next, after that, you define, okay, guys, /100, multiple path variable you can put in, guys. /100, /200. You want to define something like this, multiple path variables. The way you can add multiple here also, like that you can do multiple here also. /100, /200. Nothing but path variable 1, path variable 2. How do you capture it? Simple, same syntax again. Path variable 1, comma, path variable 2, and then you will be defining here, reading it, path variable 2, add it in the return type, path variable 2, GitHub Copilot is pre-filling it as, then start it, back again, go here, and let's test it. So 100, 200, multiple values possible. Just try to know that. Okay, so this is what is our example. We can quickly have a look of this. Like this we can specify, and accordingly we need to handle it like this. Okay, we need to handle like this. Multiple things are possible. For that, which is the URL which is going to come? The URL is going to be something like this. Okay, fine. So 100 and 200 is coming here. Okay, guys, there could be another variation. For example, here while you define it, 100, 200 is dynamic values. You can follow something like this, guys. This is crazy. Okay, dynamic values and static values process. You can do something like this. First static values, then dynamic values, and then static values. If you call this, Spring is not able to find the method which exactly matches the pattern. Okay, yes, we know that. Spring should not find. If Spring finds it, it will be magic. Spring is not finding. Yeah, okay, it should not find. It is a nightmare if Spring finds this. No, not finding. Chalo, everything is good. You expect it to not find because you have not written method where this slash process is coming.